Hello and welcome everybody to another episode of Books and Bytes. Today, we're diving deep into Eugene Onegin by Alexander Pushkin.
Okay.
It's considered like a cornerstone of Russian lit.
Oh, yeah.
And for good reason. Have you had a chance to read it yet?
I have, yeah. It's fascinating. Pushkin just paints this really vivid portrait of 19th century Russian society.
Yeah.
And it's all through this verse novel format,
Right.
which is super interesting in itself.
A novel in verse. It's like he I don't know, took all the good parts of poetry and storytelling and just mashed them together.
Yeah.
But before we get too far into the format, let's set the stage a little bit.
Okay.
What are some of the big themes that Pushkin is tackling in this book?
Well, right off the bat, we're confronted with this idea of ennui.
Okay.
That sense of disillusionment.
Yeah.
And boredom that's particularly strong in the upper classes.
Yeah.
And we see that through Eugene Onegin, the main character.
Okay, so it's like
Yeah.
Eugene's existential crisis
Mm.
isn't just his problem.
It's like it reflects something bigger.
It displays the world he lives in.
About the time period.
Okay.
So,
Alongside ennui, we also have, love and societal expectations and these consequences of their choices all kind of intertwined together. And Pushkin just explores how these forces shape the lives of the characters and often lead to pretty tragic outcomes.
Okay, so let's unpack this a little bit.
Yeah.
We meet Eugene Onegin. He's this jaded young man. And he's inherited an estate in the countryside.
Right.
You mentioned ennui. Is that why he's leaving the city, like trying to escape his boredom?
I think it's a little more complex than that. I mean, he inherited this estate from his uncle,
Right.
which brings up this whole other theme of like social obligation.
Okay.
He's expected to manage this estate, but he's not really cut out for country life. He tries to alleviate his boredom, like even by, modernizing the estate's management with all these new economic schemes. But ultimately, nothing satisfies him. He's just restless. So he's not just bored, he's like out of sync
Right.
with like his surroundings and what's expected of him.
Exactly. And this disconnect becomes even more apparent when he meets Vladimir Lensky, who's his new neighbor.
Okay.
Lensky is this young, passionate poet, completely enthralled by romantic ideals. He represents such a stark contrast to Eugene's cynicism.
So it's like Abraham versus like Goethe.
Yes.
They're both influential in different ways.
Totally.
Yeah.
And Pushkin really emphasizes this contrast through their language.
Okay.
Eugene is often witty. He uses these ironic observations about society, sometimes even biting commentary, whereas Lensky speaks in this heightened, passionate language filled with metaphors and imagery drawn from nature and romantic lit.
That's interesting. So the way they speak kind of reflects their worldview.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And then, of course, we have the Lauren sisters,
Right.
Olga and Tatyana,
The love interests.
who become entangled in this web of relationships.
Tell me about these sisters, because it seems like they represent like different facets of womanhood.
Yes. Pushkin is very deliberate in his characterization. Olga is beautiful and lively. She embodies a more traditional, outward-facing femininity.
Okay.
She's the object of Lensky's affections.
Which makes sense given the romantic.
What's his ideals?
Yeah, okay. And Tatyana.
Tatyana is more introspective.
Right.
She's drawn to books and daydreams, the quiet observer, absorbing the world around her, yearning for something deeper than just the superficiality of social gatherings.
Okay.
Pushkin even describes her as having a Russian soul,
Ooh.
which hints at this connection to something more profound than the pleading trends of the time.
She sounds fascinating. I'm guessing she's the one who falls for Eugene.
You guessed it. And it's not just a passing fancy.
Okay.
Tatyana becomes completely captivated by him. She sees this depth and complexity in Eugene that maybe other people miss.
Okay.
It's a classic case of unrequited love. But Pushkin really elevates it to something much more profound.
Okay, I have to ask what happens next. Does she confess her feelings?
She does. She does something even bolder
Oh.
for the time.
Okay.
She pours her heart out in a letter to Eugene, confessing her love.
A love letter.
Yes.
That's a big step.
Huge step, especially in the context of 19th century Russia,
Okay.
where societal norms dictated that women should be more passive in matters of romance.
Was that common back then?
Not at all. For a woman to express her feelings so directly to a man who hasn't openly reciprocated was incredibly daring.
Okay.
It really speaks to the depth of her feelings and her willingness to just defy convention.
So what's Eugene's reaction? Is he swept off his feet?
He is not, unfortunately.
Oh.
He rejects her, not cruelly, but in a way that really highlights his emotional immaturity. and inability to connect on a deeper level. He gives her this long, rather patronizing lecture about how love is fleeting, and she's better off not giving into these intense emotions.
Nice. I can imagine that must have been devastating for her to put her heart out there on the line.
Yeah.
And he basically just brushes her off.
It's a turning point in the novel for sure. Tatyana is heartbroken.
Yeah.
But this rejection also becomes like a catalyst for her own growth.
Okay.
It forces her to confront the reality of who Eugene is, and maybe more importantly, who she wants to be.
So this rejection kind of sets them on different paths.
Precisely.
Okay.
And those paths diverge even further when we get to the introduction of the duel.
Okay.
Remember that simmering tension between Eugene and Lensky?
Right. The cynical realist versus the passionate poet. There's bound to be some friction there.
It comes to a head at Tatyana's name day celebration. Eugene, perhaps out of boredom or a misguided attempt to provoke Lensky, starts flirting with Olga.
Oh, no. It's not going to end well. I bet Lensky, the hopeless romantic, took that really hard.
He does. He misinterprets the situation completely.
Yeah.
He sees it as a betrayal of their friendship and a slight against his honor.
Okay.
And fueled by jealousy and his idealistic worldview, he challenges Eugene to a duel.
Duels were like a big deal back then, right?
Huge deal. Not something you'd shrug off. They were a very ritualistic way of settling disputes, particularly among the upper classes, tied to this whole concept of honor and social standing. Refusing a duel was seen as cowardice.
Yeah.
So even though Eugene knows it's foolish, he feels obligated to accept.
Wow, that's intense.
Yeah.
So what happens? Does honor prevail?
Tragically, no. Eugene kills Lensky.
Oh, wow.
This is a pivotal moment. In the novel, it really marks a shift.
Okay.
From the lighthearted social satire of the early chapters to a much darker exploration of guilt and consequence, and the destructive power of these societal norms.
Wow, to kill your friend over something so trivial. Talk about a life-changing experience.
Pushkin doesn't shy away from the brutal reality of it. The description is very vivid.
Okay.
It highlights the senselessness of the violence and the lasting impact it has on everyone involved.
So what happens next? How does Eugene cope with this?
Consumed by guilt and remorse, Eugene flees the countryside, embarks on this long journey, a self-imposed exile, you could say.
Okay.
Searching for meaning, but ultimately failing to escape the memory of what he's done. It's during this wandering that we see a glimpse of potential growth in Eugene. He begins to question his previous cynicism. He becomes more introspective and aware of the suffering he's caused.
Okay, so there's some character development happening. What about Tatyana and Olga? How do they cope with, the aftermath?
Interestingly, Olga recovers quite quickly. Pushkin tells us that she soon marries a lancer.
Hold on, a lancer? What's a lancer?
A lancer was a type of cavalry soldier known for their speed and agility. But it kind of suggests that she's found a more conventional path, conforming to societal expectations in a way that maybe Tatyana never could.
So Olga's conforming to what's expected of her. What about Tatyana? How does she react?
Tatyana's reaction is much more internal. She doesn't openly grieve for Lensky, but we see a quiet strength and resilience emerging in her.
Okay.
She eventually marries a prince, a match arranged by her family.
Okay. Which further highlights the theme of societal pressure and the limited choices available to women of her time.
So both sisters find husbands. It sounds like their paths to marriage are very different.
Yes. Olga finds a dashing soldier. While Tatyana's marriage is more about duty and social standing, that's a great observation. It speaks to the nuances of Pushkin's exploration of femininity. Neither sister is simply a stereotype.
Right.
They both make choices within the constraints of their society, but those choices really reveal different aspects of their personalities and their aspirations.
Okay, and what about Eugene? Where does his journey take him?
Years later, Eugene returns to St. Petersburg. A changed man in some ways, but still haunted by the past. And guess who he encounters at a high society ball?
I am on the edge of my seat. Don't leave me hanging. Who does he see? Don't tell me it's Tatyana.
It is.
Oh, wow.
He encounters Tatyana, but she's no longer that shy, bookish girl from the countryside. She's transformed into this sophisticated, elegant princess, completely at ease in the world of high society. Oh, wow. I bet that was a shock for him.
Pushkin describes her transformation so beautifully. He contrasts the simplicity of her youthful appearance with the refined elegance she embodies now. She's become like the epitome of grace and poise, embodying that very society that Eugene had once found so suffocating.
Okay, so what's Eugene's reaction? Is he intimidated? Intrigued?
He's completely captivated. The tables have turned completely.
The irony. He rejects her innocent love.
Yeah.
And now he's the one pining after her.
Right.
It's like a classic romantic plot twist.
It's more than just a plot twist. It's a reflection of his own journey.
I mean,
Remember that period of self-imposed exile?
Right.
It seems to have chipped away at his cynicism and revealed this capacity for deeper emotion that maybe he wasn't aware of before.
Okay, so he's grown, but is it too late?
Yeah.
What does Tatyana think of this like? New love-struck Eugene.
She's completely unfazed
Okay.
by his advances. She treats him with polite indifference, acknowledging his presence but never really giving him the attention that he so desperately craves. It's a brilliant reversal of their earlier dynamic.
She's come a long way from that heartbroken girl
Right.
who poured her heart out in a letter.
Right. And Pushkin gives us a glimpse into her thoughts through her dialogue and her actions. She recognizes Eugene's infatuation, but she also sees its shallowness. It's not the deep, genuine love that she once offered him.
Right.
It's more a reflection of his own regret and fascination with the woman she's become.
So she sees right through him. Does he give up easily?
He does not. He becomes obsessed. He bombards her with letters, follows her to social gatherings, basically makes a nuisance of himself trying to win her back.
It sounds like something out of like a modern-day rom-com, but with a lot more angst and social consequences.
Right.
Does it work?
It backfires spectacularly.
Yeah.
Tatyana, in this
Right.
moment of stunning clarity and strength, confronts Eugene.
Okay.
And this is one of the most famous passages in the novel. She acknowledges his feelings, even admits that she still loves him, but firmly rejects his advances.
Oh, wow. That must have been an intense scene. What does she say?
Her words are so powerful. She talks about her own journey, the pain she endured after his rejection, and how she's come to terms with her life, her marriage, her place in society.
So she's basically saying, I've moved on, and you need to as well.
Yeah. She says this line that perfectly encapsulates her growth. I love you,
Right.
but I am another's bride, and I shall be faithful to him forever.
Wow.
It's a declaration of both love and duty, personal fulfillment, and societal constraint.
It's quite a statement. So what happens to Eugene? Is he heartbroken all over again?
The novel ends with Eugene alone, crushed by her rejection. Pushkin leaves us with the sense of ambiguity, a question hanging in the air. Did Eugene truly learn from his mistakes? Can he ever find happiness, or will he forever be haunted by these consequences of his choices?
A powerful ending. It leaves a reader with so much to think about.
It doesn't tie everything up in a neat little bow,
Right.
but that's what makes it so compelling.
Exactly. So for our listeners out there, why should they care about this book that was written centuries ago?
It's a novel that asks us to think about what truly matters in life. Is it the pursuit of pleasure, the fleeting satisfaction of social status, or is there something deeper, something more enduring? Pushkin really invites us to consider the complexities of love and duty and the choices we make when faced with these societal expectations. And he does it with such wit and insight into human nature that it feels incredibly relevant even today.
It sounds like a book that stays with you long after you finish reading it.
Absolutely. It makes you question your own choices, your own desires, your own definition of happiness.
Well said.
That's the mark of a truly great work of literature, isn't it?
Yeah.
It sparks these conversations, challenges our assumptions, and stays with us long after we've closed the book.
Well, on that note, we've reached the end of our deep dive into Eugene Onegin. We hope you enjoyed this journey, and maybe it's inspired you too. Pick up a copy yourself. Until next time, happy reading.